Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, you've given us a fascinating challenge to explore the intricate and, well, often mind-bending ideas of Terence McKenna,
Yeah,
specifically through excerpts from his book, The Archaic Revival.
right.
So our goal here is really to distill the most crucial insights, the genuinely surprising perspectives on topics from, psychedelic experience right through to the nature of time itself.
It's going to be quite a ride.
Definitely. Get ready for a journey into some truly unconventional territory.
That's right. The Archaic Revival, it's a collection that really throws a wide net. Touches on psychedelics and the Amazon, obviously, but also, like you said, ventures into UFOs, consciousness evolution, shamanic practices,
hmm
and even McKenna's really unique take on history and, well, the future. It's a real intellectual adventure, and we're here to sort of guide you through the key takeaways.
Absolutely. And you're in for some thought-provoking connections. We're going to delve into McKenna's perspective on how psychedelics might be linked to the very evolution of our consciousness.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Explore his rather unusual theories about UFOs,
Definitely unusual.
and try to wrap our heads around his concept of temporal resonance, which offers a very different way of thinking about time.
Okay, let's dive in. Starting with his thoughts on psychedelics and consciousness, pulling from In Praise of Psychedelics.
Okay, so McKenna looks back on his early encounters, particularly with mescaline,
Right.
and how these experiences weren't just, sensory or emotional, but they fundamentally reshaped his understanding of what consciousness is. He felt he'd accessed a level of insight that went beyond the normal ways we think and communicate, like through language.
So deeper than just words.
Yeah, it wasn't just different, it felt deeper, more direct, like getting information straight without the filter of language.
It's interesting that he aligns with Julian Jaynes's idea of the bicameral mind. Now, for those who might not be familiar, this is the theory that early human consciousness was structured differently.
Right, like one part of the brain speaking and the other hearing. Exactly, almost like an internal dialogue people attributed to gods back then.
Yeah.
McKenna saw cultural factors playing a big role in shifting us away from that state.
Mm-hmm. And he believes psychedelics could be a tool to, well, in a sense, help us reclaim a more globally aware, balanced, and interconnected consciousness.
And his view on shamanism in this context is quite striking.
Yes, definitely. For McKenna, shamanism isn't just, a set of cultural practices. It's fundamentally rooted in the use of hallucinogenic plants.
So the plants are key.
Absolutely key. He argues that when you look across different cultures, different times, the core of shamanic practice deeply tied to these plant experiences shows remarkable consistency. It's almost as if these plants unlock a universal mode of human experience and understanding.
He uses this really powerful image, describing psychedelics as connecting us to the real network of values and information inherent in the planet. When he talks about this planetary network, what exactly does he mean by that?
Well, for McKenna, these planetary values are the fundamental natural processes of life itself, birth, growth, death, sexuality, the cycles of nature.
Okay.
He sees these as the original sources of ecological wisdom and humane values, stuff that modern, technologically driven society has, to a large extent, become alienated from.
Right, we've lost touch.
Exactly. And he believed that psychedelics could offer a direct experience of this underlying reality.
So shamanism, in his view, is like a method to consciously plug back into that network.
Precisely. He defined shamanism as the intentional use of ancient techniques, archaic techniques of ecstasy. He calls them to allow individuals to re-experience this fundamental sense of wholeness and interconnectedness.
Hmm.
And importantly, he didn't see this as just a personal spiritual quest. He believed it had profound implications for our collective political and social realities.
How so?
Well, suggesting that a reconnection with these planetary values could lead to more harmonious ways of living collectively.
He even envisions a future where psychedelics have a broader cultural impact,
Yeah.
potentially leading to, like, significant positive change in mass consciousness. That's a pretty radical thought.
It is, yeah. And he doesn't shy away from the intensity of it all. He compares a profound psychedelic experience to a birth process.
Okay, like a transition.
Yeah, something inherently natural and potentially life-affirming, but also something that can be really challenging and transformative. It's not always easy, but the potential for growth is immense.
And he gets quite specific about dosages for certain substances.
Yeah.
Which is, well, pretty direct.
He does, yeah. He offers some guidelines based on his own extensive exploration and observations. For LSD, he suggested not exceeding heroic doses more than, say, 3 or 4 times a year.
Right.
For psilocybin, his famous recommendation is 5 dried grams,
A heroic dose, that's the one.
which he believed was a threshold for ego dissolution, flattening the ego. He mentions around 800 milligrams for mescaline. And interestingly, he advocates for caution with synthetic drugs. He suggests we should first ask, does it occur naturally in a plant or animal?
Why that distinction?
For him, that natural origin seemed to imply a certain kind of wisdom or inherent compatibility with us, like nature knew what it was doing.
And then we get into some of his more out there ideas, like the notion of psilocybin speaking
Mm-hmm.
and the encounters with self-transforming machine elves during DMT experiences. What's the core of these concepts for him?
These descriptions really highlight the deeply subjective and often just bizarre nature of these altered states. When he talks about psilocybin speaking, it's not necessarily a literal voice.
Right.
It's more a profound sense of direct communication, like an influx of insights and understanding that feels external to the ego, almost like downloading information.
And the machine elves.
Well, the self-transforming machine elves he encountered during DM2 experiences, they suggested to him the possibility of contact with other forms of intelligence.
Like aliens.
Perhaps even from other dimensions of reality. These weren't just hallucinations from McKenna, they felt like genuine encounters.
Wow. Okay. Moving on to the High Frontiers interview, we get a glimpse into his early explorations in the Amazon. What were some of his key takeaways from that period?
Right, so this is back in 1971. McKenna recounts his pivotal experiences in the Amazon, where he studied ayahuasca and other hallucinogenic drugs like ukuhe and kuriku.
Right, in their traditional context.
Exactly. He observed firsthand how ayahuasca was deeply woven into the fabric of shamanic healing practices and the broader folk religion of the indigenous cultures there. It wasn't just recreational, it was central to their spiritual and medicinal life.
And he draws a significant contrast with how, Western culture views these kinds of experiences, doesn't he?
Absolutely. McKenna argues that Western Christianity, with its emphasis on external authority and its suspicion of inner mystical experiences, has largely suppressed direct encounters with altered states of consciousness.
Throws off from it.
Pretty much. He believes this suppression has led to a culture that is inherently more skeptical and doubtful of these powerful inner landscapes.
He makes a really interesting point about preliterate cultures having these sort of unbroken traditions of shamanic understanding. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, he suggests that in preliterate societies, there was this continuous lineage of knowledge and practice around shamanism and the use of psychoactive plants.
Passed down through generations.
Right. This understanding wasn't something new or radical. It was an integrated part of their worldview. Modern Western culture, in contrast, has largely severed these connections, leading to a kind of amnesia about these powerful tools for exploring consciousness. He notes that in many indigenous cultures, turning to plants for guidance on fundamental life questions is just normal. It's an accepted practice.
Let's delve deeper into his specific thoughts on tryptamine hallucinogens, DMT, psilocybin, and their connection to consciousness. He explores this in Tryptamine Hallucinogens and Consciousness. What makes this class of substances so significant in his view?
Well, McKenna really considered these tryptamine-derived hallucinogens to be particularly potent keys for unlocking the mysteries of consciousness. He even made a rather bold leap, suggesting a possible link to quantum physics.
Quantum physics, wow, okay. How did he connect those?
His thinking was that the strange, non-local phenomena observed in the quantum realm might somehow mirror or be related to the equally strange and mind-expanding experiences induced by these substances.
That's a pretty radical idea.
Yeah.
What were some of the observations that led him to draw this connection?
He focused on the unique way reality presents itself under the influence of these compounds. He described information seeming to be encoded as light.
Light?
Yeah, with surfaces that constantly evolve and transform, and this feeling of being immersed in a three-dimensional information space. It wasn't just random visual noise, it felt highly structured and meaningful, almost like glimpsing the underlying code of reality itself.
And this then ties into his rather unique ideas about potential extraterrestrial communication. How does that link work?
Well, he speculated that if these tryptamine experiences offer a glimpse into a fundamental layer of reality, then perhaps understanding this family of compounds could be key to deciphering potential communication from extraterrestrial intelligences.
Like a universal language.
Maybe. He wondered if the way information is structured and experienced in these states might represent a kind of universal language or a fundamental mode of communication that transcends our earthly linguistic systems.
He also shares some very personal and intense experiences with DMT in this section. What stood out to him about those encounters?
Oh, definitely. His DMT experiences were particularly profound for him. He consistently reported encounters with what felt like autonomous, intelligent entities.
The logos.
Exactly, which he famously called the logos. These weren't passive hallucinations, they felt intensely real and communicative. He used this powerful metaphor, describing DMT as a superconducting lens of translinguistic matter that is somehow generated by our own bodies.
Iterated by us.
Yeah, suggesting that the key to these other realms might actually lie within us.
Okay. In his remarks to Archaic, 1984, McKenna seems to be pushing these boundaries of perception even further. What were some of the key ideas he presented there?
Yeah, here he really leans into the idea of psychedelics as a portal, a way to, as he put it, bring back a chunk of the other dimension into our everyday reality.
Wow.
He expressed a strong conviction that the insights gained during psychedelic experiences have this unique quality of self-evidence,
Yeah.
a feeling of profound truth that resonates deeply.
He even brings in Plato's well-known idea about humanity inventing God if one didn't exist. What was his connection there?
Well, he drew a parallel. He suggested that the intensely real and seemingly hyperdimensional worlds encountered in psychedelic states might serve a similar psychological or spiritual function for humanity.
Whether they're real or not.
Exactly. Whether these realms are real in a conventional sense or not, the experiences themselves are profoundly impactful and feel undeniably true. He also brought in Ralph Metzner's work, which explores the role of ergoline alkaloids, compounds found in things like ergot and some morning glories and sacred plants in what Metzner termed the reenchantment of the old gods, suggesting a deep historical link between psychedelics and religious experience.
And McKenna seemed to agree with the notion that soma, that mysterious, potent substance from the ancient Vedic texts, was likely a psychedelic.
Yes, he definitely concurred. He suggested that soma likely possessed psychoactive properties that profoundly influenced early Vedic culture, possibly fostering a unique kind of symbiotic relationship between humans and the natural world.
Interesting.
And he also made this crucial observation that throughout history, those in positions of power have often been wary of and have actively discouraged the use of substances that have the potential to expand consciousness.
Why? A threat to control.
Perhaps seeing them as a threat to establish control, yeah.
Okay, let's shift our focus now to a conversation over saucers. This is where McKenna shares his quite distinctive perspectives on the UFO phenomenon. What was the core of his thinking there?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting. McKenna saw some striking parallels between the characteristics often reported in UFO encounters and the subjective experiences induced by tryptamine hallucinogens, particularly psilocybin.
So UFOs and mushrooms, linked.
He proposed that the visionary states brought on by psilocybin share significant similarities with accounts of contact with UFOs, blurring the lines between inner and outer realities.
He even mentions his brother Dennis's experiences in the Amazon playing a role in shaping his views. How so?
Yes, he recounted his brother Dennis's experiences while they were in the Amazon, which suggested to both of them the possibility of multiple realities coexisting, maybe even overlapping. This idea of a fluid and multifaceted reality became a key element in McKenna's interpretation of the UFO phenomenon, suggesting they might not simply be physical craft from another planet in our conventional sense.
And this leads him to introduce the concept of the oversoul. What is that in his framework?
Right, the oversoul, he posited the existence of this kind of interconnected communicative field operating perhaps on a galactic scale.
Beyond human control.
Exactly. Which he believed existed beyond the control of human institutions like governments or organized religions. He speculated that this oversoul might be a crucial factor in understanding the origin and nature of the UFO phenomenon, perhaps as a source of the messages or experiences people report.
He viewed the arrival or awareness of UFOs as a fundamentally disruptive event for humanity, didn't he?
Absolutely. He saw the potential reality of UFOs as a profound shock to the foundations of both our scientific and religious worldviews. He even compared its potential impact to something as transformative as the resurrection.
Wow, that's strong.
Yeah. He even expressed a sense that mainstream science, in its current materialistic form, had somehow limited our understanding of our true potential and destiny, and that the revelation of UFOs could be a catalyst to break free from those limitations.
He also offered an interesting perspective on the role of shamans in this context. How did he see them in relation to UFOs?
Well, he interpreted shamans as being, in essence, ancient human systems designed to receive messages and information from other realms or dimensions.
Like antennas.
Sort of, yeah. He contrasted this with the more rigid, top-down structures of state-approved philosophies and religions. He suggested that UFOs might originate from these same other dimensions that shamans have traditionally accessed,
Hmm.
possibly being linked to the human psyche and even experienced by people under the influence of mushrooms as far back as the Paleolithic era.
The discussion of the otherworldly takes a rather unexpected and intriguing turn in his chapter titled Alien Love. What does he explore there?
Yes, here McKenna delves into this persistent and cross-cultural theme in mythology and folklore of sexual or romantic relationships between humans and non-human beings. Gods, spirits, fairies, you name it.
Right, that's a common trope.
It
Yeah.
is. And he then observed the emergence of a distinctly erotic dimension within modern accounts of the flying saucer phenomenon, suggesting a potential link between these ancient themes and contemporary experiences.
And he brings psychedelics back into this discussion, suggesting a possible connection.
He did. He proposed that psychedelic experiences, particularly those involving deep alterations of consciousness and perceived reality, could be a key to understanding the potential for what he called an alchemical wedding with the alien.
A chemical wedding.
Yeah, like a profound and transformative union at a very deep level. He also pointed to some intriguing biochemical aspects of psilocybin that fueled his speculations.
Such as what specifically?
Well, he noted that psilocybin seems to be metabolized by the human body with remarkable speed and possesses this unique chemical signature,
Uh-huh.
which led him to entertain the rather bold idea of a possible extraterrestrial origin for the mushroom itself.
Wow, the mushroom came from space.
That was his speculation. He also highlighted the unresolved puzzle of the seemingly high concentration of hallucinogenic plants, particularly psilocybin mushrooms, found in the New World. Why so many here?
He even suggests a kind of resonant connection between the mushroom and the human collective unconscious. What does that imply?
He theorized that the psilocybin mushroom might operate through a subtle form of resonance with the collective unconscious of humanity, almost as if it's broadcasting or receiving information at a deep, pre-linguistic level.
Hmm.
This idea further supported his speculation about its potential extraterrestrial origin and its role in shaping human consciousness. Ultimately, in this chapter, he argued that the evidence, while circumstantial, for an extraterrestrial connection to psilocybin was surprisingly compelling.
And that we might eventually understand it better.
Yeah, that as humanity evolves, we might develop the conceptual tools, the linguistic discrimination, to better understand this connection.
In New Maps of Hyperspace, McKenna explores the possibility of transcending our conventional understanding of reality and time itself. What are some of the new maps he proposes?
Right, here he discusses the potential for escaping the linear constraints of history and the often limited perspective of our ordinary waking consciousness, suggesting that hallucinogens could offer a pathway into what he called an eternal now.
The eternal now,
Yeah.
like being outside of
Yeah,
time.
pretty much a state of being outside of time. He even offered this unique perspective on death, viewing it as a process of becoming familiar with the nature of the after-death state,
Wow.
suggesting that these psychedelic experiences might offer a kind of preview of that transition.
He had a very specific way of looking at the present moment, didn't he?
Yes, he saw the present not just as a fleeting instant, but as a unique and highly charged point of awareness, imbued with a kind of apocalyptic potential, a moment where profound transformation could occur.
Okay.
He also delved into what he saw as unresolvable dualisms created by the very nature of language itself and the potential role of the logos, that principle of order and meaning in helping us bridge these divides.
And the psychedelic experience, again, becomes a key to potentially overcoming these limitations.
Absolutely. He argued that the intense experiences induced by tryptamines, the feelings of ecstasy, and the profound insights of DMT could offer a direct mapping into hyperspace.
Hyperspace.
Yeah, a realm beyond our ordinary perception, allowing us to bypass the linguistic and conceptual barriers that create these dualisms. He also posited that the boundaries between our waking reality and the realm of dreams were becoming increasingly permeable, like they were merging.
He also touches on the implications of technology in this context. How did he see our technological advancements relating to these ideas of transcendence?
He viewed technology as a force pushing humanity towards a potentially post-human state, where our physical bodies might become more like tools or vessels for expressing our consciousness and self-image. Ultimately, he saw this movement, along with the exploration of inner space through psychedelics, as part of a larger trend towards a return to that eternal now, a transcendence of the limitations of our physical and temporal existence, echoing a rising wave of eschatological thinking ideas about the end of times and ultimate realities.
McKenna's concept of temporal resonance is one of his most distinctive and, for many, most challenging ideas. Can you break down the core of this concept for us?
Right, temporal resonance. It's tricky. McKenna contrasted the traditional Newtonian and Einsteinian view of time, as a linear, uniform progression with our subjective experience, which often feels much more fluid and cyclical.
It doesn't always feel like a straight line.
Exactly. He was particularly interested in how we construct our models of reality and emphasized the deep interconnectedness he perceived within the universe as a fundamental principle.
And this led him to explore the ancient Chinese text, the I Ching, in a new way, didn't it?
Yes, he introduced the I Ching and its King Wen sequence not just as an oracle for divination, but as a potential foundation for a whole new model of time itself.
A model based on.
This model emphasized the concept of novelty, the increasing emergence of newness, complexity, and information over time, rather than just that simple linear progression.
And he even used early computer technology to explore this idea, developed software to analyze these patterns.
He did. He developed software to analyze what he called the fractal time wave, based on the mathematical sequences within the King Wen order of the I Ching. He was looking for recurring patterns of resonance, periods of high and low novelty, believing these patterns could reveal underlying structures in the flow of time and history.
And this led to his well-known prediction regarding the year 2012. What was the basis of that prediction within his time wave model?
Right, the 2012 prediction. Based on his analysis of the time wave, he identified a point of maximum novelty, what he termed zero novelty, or the 0 point, around December 21st, 2012.
Not the end of the world, then.
No, not in a catastrophic sense, according to him. He interpreted it as a moment of peak interconnectedness, complexity, and potential for transformation, a fundamental shift in the very nature of time and reality as we experience it, a transformation, not an apocalypse.
Okay. The chapter Among Ayahuasqueros provides a more personal and grounded account of his explorations. What were some of the key experiences he recounts there?
Yeah, this chapter details McKenna's 1976 journey into the Amazon rainforest with his brother Dennis and Kat Harrison McKenna, specifically to seek out and learn from experienced ayahuasqueros, traditional healers who use the ayahuasca brew.
Following in Schulte's footsteps.
Absolutely. He highlights the significant influence of the renowned ethnobotanist Richard Evans Schultes on their decision to undertake this expedition.
And their journey took them quite far into the interior, if I recall correctly.
Yes, they ventured up the Napo River, deep into the Amazonian jungle, in their dedicated search for authentic ayahuasqueros. They encountered various shamans, including memorable figures like Lord Dark and Don Fidel,
Wow.
and were able to observe firsthand the traditional methods of preparing ayahuasca and experience its powerful effects within a traditional ceremonial context.
He describes the visions induced by ayahuasca in a very vivid way, doesn't he? What were some of his impressions?
He does, yeah. Recounting the often intense and intricate visual landscapes, the profound sense of entering what felt like a spirit world, and the encounters with seemingly autonomous intelligences that are often reported during ayahuasca experiences. He also reflects very practically on the challenges of combining these deeply altered states of consciousness with the demanding realities of jungle survival.
Right, that can't have been easy.
No. And he draws some interesting comparisons between the ayahuasca experience and his experiences with psilocybin. What were the key differences he noted?
What did he find?
He observed that while both ayahuasca and psilocybin are powerful hallucinogens that can profoundly alter perception and consciousness, ayahuasca seemed to offer a more direct and often more intense encounter with the other.
The other.
That sense of an external, intelligent presence that many people report encountering in these states. He felt ayahuasca had a more distinctly other feel to it compared to the psilocybin experience.
Shifting gears again, his chapter Mushrooms and Evolution presents a rather provocative theory about the role of psilocybin in the development of human consciousness. What's the central idea?
Right, the stoned ape theory, essentially. Here, McKenna puts forward the fascinating hypothesis that plant hallucinogens, particularly psilocybin mushrooms, may have played a significant and largely unrecognized role in the very evolution of human consciousness and language.
What's the evidence he points to?
Well, he cites a University of British Columbia study that found trace amounts of hallucinogens in human bacteria, which, while not definitive proof, hinted at a potential long-standing relationship.
Hmm.
He also points to the use of aspilia leaves by both African peoples and chimpanzees for wound treatment, noting that certain aspilia species favored by chimps contain hallucinogenic compounds.
And this leads to the idea that these substances might have offered some kind of adaptive advantage in our evolutionary history.
Exactly. He suggests that the altered states of perception, the enhanced visual acuity perhaps, the novel insights potentially triggered by these substances could have provided various adaptive advantages. Perhaps catalyzing the development of imagination, abstract thought, increased sexual activity, and ultimately consciousness itself. He defines consciousness as awareness of awareness, and even speculates that it might have initially functioned as a kind of super nonspecific immune response to novel environmental challenges.
He even proposes that plant hallucinogens might have been the hidden factor in our rapid cognitive evolution. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, he theorizes that the relatively sudden development of human consciousness and language, the Great Leap Forward, might have been significantly influenced by the regular interaction of early hominids with psychoactive plants in their environment.
Like a catalyst.
Exactly, like an evolutionary catalyst, sparking new neural connections and ways of thinking. He also references the work of R. Gordon Wasson, who proposed that the origins of religion itself might be found in early humans' encounters with hallucinogenic alkaloids in their omnivorous diet.
And there's archaeological evidence, like prehistoric art, that might support this idea of early mushroom use.
Absolutely. McKenna points to examples of prehistoric art, such as the well-known rock paintings of the Tassili Plateau in North Africa, which some researchers interpret as depicting early forms of mushroom shamanism figures, holding mushrooms, dancing.
Right? I've seen those images.
Yeah. He also connects the widespread veneration of the great goddess in early societies with the possible ritual use of mushrooms, noting the global distribution of psilocybin mushrooms and their potential significance in early human religious and spiritual practices.
In his New Dimensions interview, McKenna offers a more sweeping vision of humanity's place in the cosmos and our potential future. What were some of the key elements of that vision?
Yeah, here he gets pretty expansive.
Yeah.
He suggested that humanity is currently in a profound state of transition, potentially on the verge of a radical transformation, perhaps even preparing to depart for the stars.
Depart for the stars, literally.
Not necessarily physical departure in spaceships, maybe more of a transcendence of our current limitations. He put the time frame at maybe 100 to 1,000 years.
And what were his reasons for believing in this kind of radical future for humanity?
Well, he argued that the power of the human imagination, now amplified by advanced technology, has become too potent, too dangerous maybe, to be safely contained solely on the surface of this planet.
We've outgrown the planet, in a way.
In terms of our imaginative and technological power, perhaps. He also reiterated his philosophical view that the world is fundamentally constructed of language and meaning, a poetic counterpoint to purely materialistic views of reality.
He revisits the concept of the logos in this interview as well. How does he interpret it in this broader context?
He interpreted the ancient Greek concept of the logos, particularly as articulated by Philo Judaeus, as representing a state of perfect understanding and communication between individuals, almost like telepathy.
Maybe. Perhaps akin to the heightened sense of interconnectedness and synesthesia often experienced in psychedelic states. He also noted the resurgence of interest in shamanism in Western culture as a sign of people becoming more receptive to the wisdom and potential of psychedelic plants. And he foresaw some significant social and technological shifts that would pave the way for this transformation.
He did. He spoke of tremendous social change being driven by the accelerating influence of media and cybernetics, potentially leading to a future where consciousness could be experienced in ways detached from the limitations of the physical body.
Uploading consciousness.
Something like that.
Right.
He even referenced William Butler Yeats's poem Sailing to Byzantium as a powerful metaphor for the human body transforming into a kind of indestructible cybernetic vessel, released into a hyperspace of formation, a realm of pure creative potential.
Wow.
Interestingly, on a personal note, he mentioned he preferred exploring altered states in environments of minimal sensory input dark rooms, quiet emphasizing the importance of inner experience over external stimulation.
Finally, we come to his thoughts on the Voynich manuscript, one of history's most enduring and perplexing mysteries. What was his perspective on this undeciphered text?
Ah, the Voynich. It is indeed a fascinating enigma. Dating back to at least the late 16th century, it's written in this completely unknown alphabet.
Completely unknown script.
Yeah, and filled with these bizarre illustrations, unidentifiable plants, strange astronomical diagrams, groups of bathing nymphs. Despite centuries of attempts by some of the world's best cryptographers, its meaning remains entirely elusive.
And it's attracted all sorts of theories over the years, hasn't it? What are some of the main ideas about its origin and purpose?
Oh, numerous theories abound. Some believe it's an elaborate code or cipher designed to conceal important information, maybe alchemical, astrological, or medical secrets.
Right.
Others suggest it might be written in a lost or constructed language. There's even the possibility, of course, that it's just an elaborate, meaningless hoax.
Could be.
Some have linked it to figures like Roger Bacon or John Dee and Edward Kelly, known for their esoteric interests.
The illustrations themselves are so peculiar. Do they offer any clues, or do they just deepen the mystery?
They mostly deepen the mystery, I'd say. The unusual illustrations with their fantastical plants that don't match any known species, the enigmatic bathing scenes, the intricate celestial charts, they only add to the puzzle.
Yeah.
They've been interpreted in countless ways: medieval medicine, botany, symbolic alchemy, or maybe just entirely imaginary concepts.
McKenna touches on Dr. Leo Levitov's rather intriguing theory about the manuscript. What did Levitov propose?
Right. Dr. Levitov put forward this fascinating hypothesis linking the Voynich manuscript to the Cathar heresy that religious movement brutally suppressed in the Middle Ages.
Okay.
He suggested that the manuscript might be a coded record of their secret beliefs and practices, perhaps preserving a lost oral tradition in this unreadable script.
And McKenna himself offers a compelling interpretation of why the manuscript might remain undeciphered. What was his take?
Well, McKenna proposed that perhaps the very fact that the Voynich manuscript has resisted all attempts at decipherment points to something fundamental about the nature of reality and information itself.
Like it's meant to be unreadable.
Maybe. He suggested that it might represent a realm of otherness that resists easy linguistic capture and understanding, a kind of natural encryption that reflects the inherent mystery of the universe itself.
So as we conclude this deep dive into the world of Terence McKenna, we've certainly covered a lot of ground. Wow.
Indeed. We've explored his multifaceted views on psychedelics as tools for understanding consciousness, their potential role in human evolution, even their possible connection to ETs. We've grappled with his unique perspectives on UFOs, his understanding of shamanism as a timeless practice, and his complex, fascinating theories about time itself.
Right. Temporal resonance.
Yeah. And we've pondered the enduring enigma of the Voynich manuscript. It's a lot.
It really does make you think about things in a different light. It begs the question, doesn't it? Could the exploration of our own inner psychedelic landscapes be as vital to our understanding of ourselves and the universe as our outward explorations of physical space?
That's a great question.
Or perhaps, what does McKenna's concept of the archaic revival truly signify for how we interpret our history and the vast possibilities that might lie ahead for humanity?
These are profound questions, yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely resonate long after our conversation ends. We encourage you, our listener, to delve deeper into McKenna's writings and the many fascinating topics he explored.
Absolutely.
His work continues to spark debate and offer alternative perspectives on some of the most fundamental mysteries of existence. There's a wealth of ideas there to explore and consider for yourself.